On this video, I'm going to show you the result of my findings. I'm gonna show you before and after on multiple games so you see how big of a deal this is. I'm installing right now Red Dead Redemption Online and I haven't tried the game yet, so that's another game I'm going to try. So let me show you all the games I'm going to try and all the games that I have that are affected with this discovery of forcing limited on the TV while having full on the NVIDIA control panel. So this is going to affect every single non-HDR supported games. When you use HDR on Windows, you max out that SDR HDR slider. The games are going to try to output 498 nits, so that's the max CLL, and you can use HGIG and it's going to look beautiful. But you have to have on the NVIDIA control panel or your AMD control panel, you need to have full, and then on the TV you're going to force limited range. So you go to settings. These are all the games I'm going to try here. You go to settings, brightness, you go to black level, which is incorrect. This should be called range. So you're going to force limited. So we are going to see first, and I'm gonna share with you all the settings for the games. We're going to see first Watch Dogs Legions. Then I'm gonna show you an SDR game that doesn't support HDR. Mafia, I have the game, both games open. And then I'm gonna show you Cyberpunk, before and after. Metro Exodus, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and maybe if we have time, Shadow of the Tomb Raider Auto HDR, which also has that issue. So let's take a look real quick to Watch Dogs Legions. So let me show you the settings we're going to use here. 700 for the peak brightness and HDR Paperwhite 200. So with this combination of settings, the game is going to try to output 720 nits. The max CLL is going to be 720 nits, and the reason why I want to lower that, let me run the benchmark, the benchmark while I'm speaking with you. So the reason why we want to reduce the max CLL on the game is because by forcing limited, we are also affecting the peak brightness. So I am still putting together on my head what's going on here. Some people confirmed to me on the comments of the previous video. They confirm my findings that yes, I'm right, it works, but I'm trying to put together exactly what's going on for a video so I can explain you why this is working and why you want to do this in the games that I'm going to show you on this video, and more that I don't have. They probably have the same issue. So this video is not going to be an explanation. Here I'm just going to show you that this is working and is beautiful. So for example, if I change here, you see how good it looks. If I change here from limited to full, look at this. Wash out, correct. Wash out, correct. See, the difference is staggering. I know the recording is not gonna be perfect, but you can see the difference. It's huge. Look at that. Wash out, fix. Wash out, fix. So on Watch Dogs Legions, what I was doing, I was lowering the black level, the screen, that screen brightness here on the CU1. I was lowering that to 44, okay, and that was fixing the problem. But the issue was this. So there you go. Let's take a look at an SDR game I have open here. Oh, Red Dead is ready. So I'm going to also. So Red Dead Redemption, I don't know yet. I haven't seen the game yet, but I'm expecting it to work too, based on what I've seen on Red Dead. So look at this. This is the default full. It's washed out. So you use limited, boom, and it's fixed. So the problem is, this is Mafia Definitive Edition. The problem is every single game that is not HDR game, so not supported, every single game that you open while you have HDR on Windows, the game is on SDR, so all the Windows SDR content needs to be forced to limited. So you need to have full on your NVIDIA control panel or your AMD control panel, and you need to force limited on the TV. That is going to give you the correct result. Look at it. It's clear. Like from full, it's just washed out. You see everything is washed out because the black level is raised and it's terrible. So we change it to limited, boom, perfect. And the setting I'm going to use here is HGIG. And I'm going to show you on God of War specifically. It is a staggering difference, and also Horizon Zero Dawn. So God of War HDR, native HDR, it is usable, but it's not ideal. And Horizon Zero Dawn is just broken. I cannot use it, so I'm definitely going to just use this option instead. So let me show you another game. Let me show you. I want to leave Red Dead Redemption for the end. Red Dead Redemption is going to be like the bet. I bet that it works, but I don't know yet. I haven't opened it. I was installing it before this video. So let's take a look at Cyberpunk. The difference here on Cyberpunk is huge. The gigantic difference is like, wow. From broken to, man, this is just insane. Let's see. You see all the screens loading. Man, this is such a huge problem from Windows. It's just unbelievable. How can they have this issue? I don't know if it's Windows to blame, if it's the developers. I don't know who should I blame, but it's still the same. So go to settings. I'm gonna show you the HDR settings here. This is what we're going to use. 550, okay? 550 on my PC is doing max CLL 720. So for the game to try to output 720 nits, we want to use 550 here. And this is just the UI, so lower that and just the default tone map midpoint. So let's run the benchmark here. I can just use the game, but let's run the benchmark. And on the benchmark, we're gonna see it. It's such a huge difference. It's incredible. So we're gonna go here before and after here. So we have HGIG. Look at this. Washed out, fix. Washed out, fix. It's clearly to see. It's unbelievable. Like this is the mess. So when you open the game, this is the mess that you see. Everything looks washed out. You have to lower the black level to 44. See what's going on? What's wrong with these games that we're opening on Windows? Why it looks so washed out? This is why. This discovery is huge, and I haven't seen anybody talking about this. Anybody. Look at this. Washed out, fix. Or like Jensen likes to say, before, after. I can do this all day. Before, after. The more GPUs you buy, the more you save. Before, that's right. Before, after. It's incredible. Look at this. So you see these highlights are not clipping here. I can see them. But if I make the game try to max CLL 797 nits, that highlight is going to clip. So that's why I'm lowering it to 720 nits for the native HDR games. So let's take a look at Metro Exodus real quick. So the explanation, like I said, I'm still working on it. I don't understand it fully yet, but some people confirm my findings on the previous video, and somebody, especially, I forgot the name, is due to have to die, something like that. I don't remember. So many people comment. So he explained my findings very well, and he understands that better than me, it seems. And he was suggesting that using reshade and limiting from 16, so basically limiting the range on reshade might arrive to a better result, especially so I don't get any highlight clipping. But I haven't confirmed that, so I'm gonna do that on the second video. So on Metro Exodus, I am going to use the native HDR from the game, and I'm going to use dynamic tone mapping, okay? Because the native HDR from the game is preserving the highlight details better. But the game is trying to output over 2000 nits. So I'm gonna use dynamic tone mapping on Metro Exodus, or I actually like to use tone mapping off. The highlights, dynamic tone mapping off is going to do tone mapping with a 4000 nits target range, and it's going to roll off at 250 nits. So if the game is trying to output 2000, you will never see the peak brightness of this display. It's gonna be like 600 nits, something like that. But you will get the shadow detail correct. So this game is all about darkness and shadows. So I'm going to play on a dark room and use tone mapping off instead. But because dynamic tone mapping is going to over brighten the shadow details, and I really don't like that. But it is the correct setting in this case. So let me show you before and after here. This is Metro Exodus. Look at this. It's garbage. It's broken. Like when you open the game, you see, man, this is just trash. Fix. Before, after. Before, after. It's fixed. So that is it. Let me open. I already showed Cyberpunk. Let me open God of War. I'm gonna leave Red Dead Redemption for the end. Let me open God of War. So God of War HDR is usable, but the game is trying to output 10,000 nits. Okay, so if you leave the sliders on the default value and you use dynamic tone mapping, I see color clipping. I see clipping on the highlights, color posterization, I think is the correct term, and it's not good. It's not good. So what I was doing on the game, I was using. Let me just open the game. So what I was doing on the sliders on the game, I was using 38 on the brightness and 38 on the contrast to get better visibility on the darkness, because it was too dark. Okay, let me see right now. Yeah, I have the HDR on the game off right now. Let me see, and I have dynamic tone mapping. So here we want to use dynamic tone mapping for the HDR from the game. Okay, so I have right now SDR. Okay, so SDR, what I mean is the game is not using the native HDR. So I'm gonna use here HGIG, so you see how it looks. HGIG limited with the HDR from the game. I lowered the brightness to 45 because it was too bright. This is looking fantastic. So if we change here from limited to full, you see everything is washed out. So you see this? It's washed out. You do this, boom, fix. So for every SDR content, every single game you want to open on SDR and use that SDR to HDR slider max out, the game is gonna try to output 498 nits, so that max CLL 498. So that's perfect for this TV. It's not perfect. Ideally, you want the TV to output, your 700 nits, your 800 nits. But on my testings, I see that forcing limited actually increases the highlights. So actually, the highlights are like 600 nits, which is HDR. So let's take a look at here. Very interesting. You see the effect that HGIG has on every single SDR game that you use this trick. Look at the highlights with HGIG. They not only become more brighter, but they become more visible. So what's happening here when you have dynamic tone mapping off is that it's following the EOTF and it's rolling at 250 nits. It's starting to roll, okay, to get the equivalent values to that 4000 nits target. So what's happening here with HGIG is that it is following the EOTF until the max CLL, and the max CLL is just 497. So the TV has no problem following that EOTF, and that's why it has such a big impact. Look at the character itself. Just look at the character. How the brightness pops. Boom! It makes everything pop. The skin of the character is popping. It's beautiful. How much detail you get when the skin pops. So here it looks like you cannot see it very well. You do this, wow! The character itself. And when we go to the shadows, it looks beautiful. Let's take a look at this on the shadows. Inside a cave here is beautiful. There's no difference here. So when we see, for example, a very bright object, of course on the recording this is going to look blown out. It's gonna look blown out. But when we do this, we see that objects are very bright, like the clouds, of course. They become visible. They pop. So the clouds here, it's a staggering difference. It's like, wow, it's beautiful. So you might think, man, but 500 nits. Actually, like I said, it's actually higher because of that limited range. This is gonna pop like 600 nits. So you might think, man, 600 nits, that's not good. The difference between 600 nits and 800 nits is visible, but it's side by side, but it's still going to give you the HDR effect, and you're not going to see any clipping. It looks beautiful. So if we try the HDR from the game, let me show you that real quick with my settings, what I do. Otherwise it's too dark. What I do is this. I use the HDR from the game and I lower the brightness to 38 and the contrast to 38. Okay, that's what I do. You see is but here I cannot force this this limit. Here this game doesn't have that problem. So I just leave it on full on the auto, and you see it's dark. It's darker. It's darker, but it's usable. It's usable. It doesn't look bad. It looks good. Maybe on the recording you see, oh, that's garbage, because you saw the previous result. It was a lot brighter. But this is going to give you brighter specular highlights, and it is visible on the darkness. So yeah, if you leave it at the default, the 50 and 50, this is even darker. So that's why I lowered it to 38 and 38. And when we go to the shadows, it's still visible. So yeah, I might go back and forth on this one. I'm not very sure. But one game that I'm 100% sure I'm going with the SDR and forcing that limited is Horizon Zero Dawn. The HDR on Horizon Zero Dawn is broken, in my opinion. There's no way, and I've been I've been trying to get the HDR on Horizon Zero Dawn right forever. There's no way I can get the HDR right on this game. No way. It's broken no matter what. Because you look at the clouds and it's a mess. It's a mess. And the contrast of the image is affected too much. And to get the visibility for the midtones, you need to blow out the highlights, and it's horrible. So the game is trying to output 10,000 nits no matter what you do with the sliders. So this is what I would do. This is beautiful. I'm gonna use HGIG, and I'm going to use this limited range. So let's do some before and after here. Look at this. It's beautiful. This is beautiful, man. Absolutely amazing. So let's take a look at some before and after here. So we have it in full. It's washed out. We do this, boom. Washed out, fix. It's amazing. So if I use the HDR from the game, yeah, I'm not even gonna try that. It's horrible. It's horrible, man. But if this is the way I'm gonna play the game. So this might be too bright on the recording. It might be looking blowing out because it's real bright. It's very, very bright. But if I change here, for example, if I change here, look at the clouds are perfectly visible. Like it's amazing. So on the recording it might look blowing out, but yeah, let me do some before and after with HDIG here. So you see the impact that HDIG has when playing these SDR games on Windows is huge. Like the clouds pop, and not only the clouds, the character itself. You look at the character. It's wow, like these details here, and I'm showing you this because the very bright objects are not going to be shown on the recording because it's gonna look blowing out. But the character, you might be able to see it. Look at the character itself. It's the cloth here. This cloth. Look at the character. Boom! The character itself is popping. The skin, the cloth. So what that means, all of that is brighter than 250 nits. That's what it means. Because here on off, it's going to start rolling off at 250 nits. So with HDIG, it's going to follow that EOTF until 497. That's why it looks brighter. But like I said, actually, when you force limit it, the game is gonna be brighter than 500 nits. It's actually going to be like 600 based on my measurements. So that's HDR. 600 nits is HDR. It's considered HDR. And this looks beautiful, man. The entire character, all the background that is super bright is affected. The midtones are not affected, only the highlights. It is beautiful, beautiful result. Everything. Just amazing. So, and you can use dynamic tone mapping on, which is bright everywhere. You use that for black frame insertion. I can even use black frame insertion with HGIG because the other thing I think is going on here is that because the peak brightness is not as hard, the game. So let me open Red Dead Redemption. I'm going to leave this Shadow of the Tomb Raider for the end. Let me open Red Dead Redemption, which I haven't seen yet. Let me take a look at the recording. Yeah, recording's still good. So I haven't tried Red Dead Redemption, okay? So I bet this is going to work, but I'm not sure. So let's see. So what I was saying is that because the game is not trying to output, it's just 500 nits, I think the overall image can be brighter because the ABL, the automatic brightness limiter of the TV, is not kicking in as hard because the TV has limitations, okay? The TV cannot do more than 400-500 nits full screen bright, okay? If you turn on module HDR on the service menu and you are on SDR, you can get like 400 nits of full screen, okay? So, but on HDR, that's not gonna happen. So by having that max CLL being 500 nits on SDR games, what's going to happen is that it's gonna be easier for the TV to have an overall brighter image. So that works very well for black frame insertion. For Motion Pro High, it works very well. Actually, I was playing Mafia with HGIG and black frame insertion on high, and it was looking absolutely perfect. I didn't need to use dynamic tone mapping. And the HGIG presentation is better. It's better. You get more details. It is a lot better. So that's awesome because now I can use black frame insertion on any game I want, any game. I can just turn off the HDR from the game and use this. Or if the HDR from the game allows me to use the black frame insertion, then I might use that. Or if it looks better, the colors look better. Talking about the colors, one thing I was trying here for that SDR, for the SDR games, color gamut native, color depth 50, 150. And this doesn't look as incorrect as with HLG. It actually looks very good. So let's see what's going on here with Red Dead Redemption. I think the game is opening on SDR. Yeah, HCIG is popping. I think the game opened on SDR. Let me see. I'm not sure. Broken, fix. Oh my god, if this is HDR, we just find the cure. Let's see what it is. Settings, graphics. See if the game is on HDR. Yes, it is. Fix. Man, this is incredible. Fix Red Dead Redemption HDR. Let's take a look at it. This is crazy, man. Nobody has Red Dead Redemption working right with HDR because everyone is using, even if you use limited on the NVIDIA control panel, that's not gonna work. It still looks broken. So yeah, so the highlights are clipping. The highlights are clipping. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower this to 700. Yeah, that's the correct value. So the game max CLL is 720 because forcing limited is also affecting the highlights. So that might be fixed with that reshape. But this is perfect now. Let's take a look at some before and after comparisons. So this is the game HDR. So by default, this is what you get. It's washed out. Fix. Washed out. All the colors are washed out. It's like a Vaseline on the screen. You do this. Fix. Man, this is huge. This is fixing so many games. This is huge. Broken. Fix. Broken. Fix. And you get perfect visibility. It's not that you're going to crush blacks or anything like that. Fix. You're not going to crush blacks. Let me show you on the menu. Let me show you on the menu. So when we see the menu, usually you turn on HDR on the game and you look at the menu and you know something is wrong. You're looking at the menu, you say, man, this is gray. It's so ugly. It's broken. And you know that it's broken. You do this. Fix. Man, and again, forcing limited on the GPU, on the NVIDIA control panel, is not gonna work. It's not going to work. The explanation is coming on the next videos. I still trying to get that explanation nailed for you, so I can understand it better to explain you. But here's the solution, man. I show you multiple games. Fix, broken, fix. Broken, fix. This is insane, and HDIG is working beautifully here. Let's look at the highlights. Boom. Man, like, it's awesome. Awesome. That's it. So to summarize, let me see if the recording is still good. Yeah, to summarize, for every single SDR game you want to use HDR on Windows, you turn it on, you max out that SDR HDR slider. That is going to have an effect for all SDR content on Windows, okay? So the TV is on HDR, but all that content is SDR, okay? So for native HDR games that you open and you are like, man, this looks washed out, give this a try. Force the TV to limit it and you're gonna be surprised. So far, I know HDR games that I know are fixed with this. Metro Exodus, big time fix. Red Dead Redemption, Cyberpunk, Watch Dogs Legions. 4 games, okay? So now, for broken HDR games like Horizon Zero Dawn, that's broken in my opinion. The game is trying to output like 10,000 nits and the contrast of the image is, there's no way to, if you fix the contrast of the image, then you look at the clouds and it's a mess. It's horrible. So for those games, turn off HDR completely and use this limited with HGIG. The game is trying to output 497, max CLL 497, but it's actually gonna be brighter because limited is affecting the highlights, okay? And just use that option. For God of War, I might be going back and forth between the native HDR from the game with my settings. It's not that bad. It looks darker, which I like, and it's probably going to push the highlights brighter. So I might go with that HDR, even if it's not ideal, it's not spectacular. The game is also trying to output like 10,000 nits. And for black frame insertion, you can use the SDR version of the game. It's super bright with HTIG and it works black frame insertion high, Motion Pro high. So that's probably the best black frame insertion image quality that you can get. Even better than with native HDR, because the native HDR is not going to have an overall brightness that is going to be as bright as that option. So there you go, multiple games fixed, and it's the same issue. So my findings are huge. This is huge. It's affecting so many games, native HDR games and all SDR content. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm not going to use native color gamut for real HDR games, okay? This was just me trying. For SDR content, I think it might look better. But for native HDR, I'm just gonna use auto detect and color depth 55. But for SDR games, I might try native 50. It might look better. And let me see if I have time to show you Shadow of the Tomb Raider with auto HDR from Windows 11, because that's the only auto HDR from Windows 11 that I see has the same issue. I have to open the game on the launcher. It doesn't work if I open it on the direct access for some reason. It asks me to log into Epic and the game opens and it's a black screen. I don't know why. So this is interesting because Shadow of the Tomb Raider supports HDR, native HDR, and supports auto HDR from Windows 11. And I would actually use the native HDR from the game, okay? I much rather use the native HDR for the game. The settings for the native HDR from the game is fine-tune dark areas. Yeah, I have to write down this because there's so many settings I forget. I have to go back and watch my video. I think it is fine-tune dark areas -5 and dynamic tone mapping. So let me see. This is auto HDR right now. You see, HDR is off. So with auto HDR from Windows 11, it has this problem, same problem, but the game still have the black level raised a little bit. So I'm gonna give you the settings if you wanna try the auto HDR. So we do the same. See, full is washed out, limited is correct, washed out, correct. But we also have to lower here these fine-tune dark areas to -2. Yeah, -2. I was testing it yesterday. So if you want to use the auto HDR from Windows on this game, you have to use these fine-tune dark areas -2 and force the TV to limited. But I would actually don't do that because the colors with the native HDR are better. So I would use native HDR on this game. I would use dynamic tone mapping. Not force the TV to limited. It is not necessary here on this game. And lower. So these are the settings. We'll just do the default full. I will use dynamic tone mapping instead because the colors are beautiful. And fine-tune dark areas -5. That's the setting. That's the setting I'm going to use on this game. Native HDR, fine-tune dark areas, -5 because the game has the black level raised in 0.05 nits, and dynamic tone mapping. And the game looks perfect. And the value here on the HDR luminance is not very important. You can max out the slider, but what I did is I tested with HGIG and I go one click before the logo clips. So when the logo disappears, I go one click before that, and that's going to try to output 797 nits, max CLL 797 nits. Okay. I still have some time. Let's run the benchmark a little bit here. It looks amazing. It looks very, very good. So I'm gonna use the native HDR. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I think this is just huge, man. Huge. This is basically confirming that HDR on the PC on Windows is broken. They need to fix this thing. They need to fix it. Not all games are affected, but a lot of games are affected. That's why you open the games and you see, man, this is broken. It's just broken. I bet, by the way, that on the consoles, on HDR is limited range. I bet that's the case. And so when they port the game from the console to the PC, that's why we have this mess. They don't care. They just whatever. So then Windows has this issue with limited, full. The game is unlimited, but really the TV is in full. It's a mess. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions.